Hello, and welcome to episode 7 of the Bitcoin Hour. I am Dave Bradley, and as you can see, I'm coming to you from my lair deep beneath the city of Calgary. And I have what I think and hope is another interesting story today. Um, this story is about the emergent qualities of money and an experience that I had long before I found Bitcoin or really knew what money was. And uh, this in retrospect, looking back at this story, is a perfect example of how money is a naturally emergent force. And so stay a while and listen. We're going to get into that. So, like most people who got into Bitcoin early, I was a big nerd growing up. I played a lot of video games growing up. And during my years in high school, I was particularly playing a game called Diablo 2 that a lot of people are probably familiar with. And the interesting thing in Diablo 2 is that when it launched, there was an in-game money, and it was called gold. And this was a form of fiat into this mini economy that the developers of the game had created. And so they had, along with the game, created their own form of money that they had decreed would be the in-game money. And I don't think a lot of thought was going into sort of like in-game economies back then. And so uh, not a lot of thought had gone into what the implications of how this money works might be. And so very quickly after launch, it became clear that, like most forms of fiat currency, the in-game gold in Diablo 2 was just much too plentiful to remain a good form of money. It wasn't able to store value over time because it wasn't scarce. It was just not scarce at all. And it got to the point very quickly where no players in the game would accept gold for any kind of transaction. There was a few cases for it within the game, but ultimately it became more or less useless because every player in the game had a virtually unlimited supply of gold. And so why would you want to trade something more rare and valuable like your time or your goods for something that is not at all rare? And ultimately what ended up happening is that the market picked a new form of money. And this is something that we've seen many times throughout history, whether it's rye stones or seashells or glass beads. Humans in many scenarios have used different forms of money that were not high quality forms of money, and that they were fairly easy to reproduce. And in all of these cases, when a better form of money came into the market, and in most cases that was gold, the hard money naturally displaced the easy to create money. And that's basically what happened in Diablo as well. And so we had this gold that was virtually worthless, and yet people still wanted to transact. You'll have to excuse me as I take the occasional break to enjoy my cigar. Back to the story. What ended up happening in Diablo 2 was that the market naturally decided on a new form of money. And in Diablo 2, it was this item called the Stone of Jordan. We call them SOJs for short. And this particular item happened to meet a lot of the criteria for what you need for good money. And therefore, the market naturally ended up selecting that. And so how that worked was the Stone of Jordan was a ring in the game. So it was quite small in terms of the size of the item and how much of your inventory it would take up. And it was rare enough to be valuable, but not so rare that you couldn't have a reasonable level of divisibility. So you could trade, 5 or 6 stones of Jordan for some other good item, and another item might be priced at 15 stones of Jordan. So there's enough granularity in the supply to allow it to be divisible enough to service the economy. It was small enough and portable enough that it was better than other in-game items for moving value. And because it was hard to get, it was rare, and so it held its value over time a lot better than the sort of top-down decreed form of fiat money in the in-game gold. And this economy worked really well for quite a while. 6 to 9 months into the game after launch, somebody came up with a bug that allowed you to dupe items. And of course, the first thing that they duped was the most useful item in the game, which had now become the money, the Stone of Jordan. And so the Stone of Jordan overnight went from being quite rare to not rare at all, and was almost immediately dropped as the in-game money. And these are things that just happen naturally. They happen because of the choices that the market made, because of the choices of many individuals that yielded a greater result. And that's essentially what we're living through right now with fiat currency and Bitcoin, is that Bitcoin, as the hardest form of money that we've ever had, has come into the market and is now in the process of displacing these weaker, softer forms of money that are easier to produce. And that's what happened to the Stone of Jordan in Diablo as well, was once people found a way to produce it, and this is very important, if you give someone the ability to produce the money that you use, they will inevitably produce it and they will spend it. That's the scenario that we're in with our governments in really all over the world right now. And so when the Stone of Jordan got to a point where it was no longer rare and valuable, the market picked something else. It picked some new items that came out in a new update after the bug that allowed the infinite duplication of the money had been fixed. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. We're in a system where there's an infinite duplication bug, and this special class of people at the government have the ability to produce the money that we accept for our time. And as long as we continue to accept that money for our time, they will continue to produce that money at an ever increasing rate. And yeah, I mean, that's sort of where we're at. I think that we will naturally be seeing the market move to Bitcoin. We're right in the process of seeing Bitcoin emerge as a superior form of money as the market realizes that it does have superior monetary properties. So that that whole story was something I didn't realize until I read the Bitcoin Standard many years later, and was thinking through some of the examples about the history of money and where hard money has displaced soft money. And eventually this idea just sort of popped into my head as I've seen this, I've been through this before. And this is not a new concept. This is something that has happened in many markets with many forms of money. And, it's happening now. So with that, we're getting up to just about 8 minutes here. And I'm getting noticed that, unfortunately, the government has stolen the remaining 52 minutes of this episode of the Bitcoin Hour. And so that is all you get.